And while we do that also, I'd love to hear from you all what kind of roles you're looking for. Which nanodegree program did you complete and which roles are you looking for? That'll help give me some context since we have a smaller group today. So if you're just joining, let me know where you're calling in from. And for those of you who are already in here, let me know which nanodegree program you took or are currently taking, and then what types of jobs you're looking for. So Omar did the machine learning nanodegree. Very cool. What else? Who else do we have in the room? Also looking for machine learning engineer roles. Very cool. Pursuing AI for healthcare. Great space to be in. What else? Data engineering. Also another great space. You all are kind of doing some similar things here. Machine learning, deep learning, computer vision. All of you guys should be, getting to know each other. You're all kind of in the same space. It's a great place to be and a great place to network. Jonathan, I see data analyst, another great one as well. Kevin, cloud computing, awesome. You're like the only one who's not within the data science, machine learning as of right now, but that is okay. We love to see people from different backgrounds, all very in-demand spaces for you all to be. Let's see. I haven't decided yet. Still working on my nano degree. That's not a problem either. Maybe through this, I'll help you figure out which path to pursue. Product management. And Ross says intermediate Python, which is a work in progress, starting from web development, see how it goes. Very cool. I mean, that you got to start somewhere, and you're more advanced than I am. So there is some kudos for you there. I started the intro to programming nano degree and didn't make it all the way through. So I'll leave the technical expertise to you all, and you all can leave the personal branding and career support to me. Great. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. If you do have questions along the way, please feel free to kind of drop them in the chat, or you can hop on your microphone. We do have a smaller group today, about 12 people, so smaller than we normally have, which means you all can ask a little bit more individualized questions. This session is not meant to be a lecture. So I don't want to talk at you guys for the next hour. I am going to be sharing some best practices and some tips, but I really want you all to engage. I want to get your questions answered. I want you to leave this feeling confident entering a job search for 2021. And even if you're not aggressively searching right now, this is a great place to be to learn how to put yourself in a position to where you can be successful in a job search. So a little bit about me. So my career really started in education. So I went to school to be a business teacher, and then I transitioned into colleges and universities working with college students. And now kind of shifted over to adults and ed tech and kind of working with people who are going through similar programs as you all. So when you talk to different career coaches, some of them will have areas that they focus on. And I think my specialization is within personal branding and showcasing your impact. So really making a name for yourself and becoming recognized as a subject matter expert in your field of choice. That's one of the areas that I focus on, because I've always seen job searching as more of a marketing activity than anything, because I want you all and all of my students and clients to put themselves in a position where they're the ones in demand. I don't want you guys always having to be the ones to apply and reach out. I want you to be in a position where you are attracting recruiters. And if you're freelancing or entrepreneurs as well, I want you to be passively attracting those people and that business potentially, if that's what you're looking for. That's kind of my area of expertise. So you'll see that coming in and out throughout today's presentation, as well as any other webinars that I've facilitated. And as I mentioned, this is one of my favorite parts of this role, is being able to engage with a global audience. As we saw earlier in the chat, we have people from all over the world, and being able to kind of bring you all together. So as I mentioned, I do not want to be talking at you for the entire time. So in thinking about how to best participate, really participation and value go hand in hand. You'll get the most out of this session if you're active and if you're involved. If you're just listening to it in the background, that's okay as well, but you're not going to get as much out of it as those who are actively engaged. So if you can, please turn on your camera, your microphone, This is a great opportunity for you to build and network. If you do want to speak, just make sure that you unmute your microphone, but keep it muted while others are speaking, just for some housekeeping rules here. One other thing that I want to mention is do not be self-conscious about your English. I talk to Udacity students all the time who are afraid that people are going to judge them. This is a safe space. Nobody here is evaluating you for a job. Nobody here is judging you or your background. And one of the things that I always like to tell people is that if you speak English as well as another language, that's an advantage. That's not a disadvantage. And I want people to see that and be able to speak with confidence, even if they're not the best English speakers. Being bilingual is something that can really set you apart in a job search, especially now that we're operating in more of a global economy and you're able to really work from anywhere. So as you might have known, I speak a little bit quickly. I get really passionate about this work. And so if I'm going too fast, please let me know. I will do my best to slow down and enunciate so that you can understand everything that I am saying. And then lastly, for this session specifically, I wanted to make it clear again, this is not designed for me to talk at you for an entire hour. This is more so designed to be discussion based and Q&A style. So each slide is going to kind of cover a major topic. I'll speak on it for a little bit, and then I want you to ask questions related to that. I'd love if you could turn your microphones on to ask those questions. And then also, if you have previous successes with this, I'd love for you to share as well. Once again, we do have a smaller group. So if I'm talking about something and you think, oh, I have a good example of that, or I've done that in the past and it's worked, I'd love to hear you share that with the group. Or if you have answers to some people's questions that I might not have. As I mentioned before, it's important to recognize that I am not a nanodegree content expert. I am also not a technical expert. So your questions that are more technical or more so related to your expertise, I'm not necessarily going to be able to help with that unless it is areas that I'm familiar with. And so there may be others in the room who can potentially help you with some of those questions that might be a little bit more technical that I'm just not the best to answer. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to hear from you all again. You can jump in the chat or you can turn on your microphone and we'll try to go one at a time. But I want to know from you all, what do you believe is your biggest barrier to landing a job? I'm really interested in hearing this. I ask this question to every single student that I coach. And so I want to know off the top of your head, what do you feel like is the biggest thing that's holding you back right now from landing a new role? Even if you haven't jumped in and started job searching yet, what do you think might be your biggest hurdle to jump?
Can I go? All right. So first of all, hello everyone. This is Aladdin.
So I see not being certain what I want to do. That's definitely one of the topics we'll talk about today. Moto says skills. I'd love for you to be a little bit more specific in what you mean by that. What else?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Ross says, for me, it's technical expertise. That's why I'm a nanodegree student. Well, you are in the right place. So hopefully you're in a position where you're kind of being a little bit more intentional in your career path. So you may not be aggressive in your job search, but this, I think, will help you to figure out what you should be focused on, what you can be learning, and how to kind of hit the ground running when you are ready to be really aggressive with that job search. So I'm glad you're here. Kevin says, not having actual work experience with the technology. Yes, that is a tough one to grasp. Let's see. You can't hear us. No, I can't. I can't hear you. It looks like some people are muted.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Oh, there we go. Man, I had mine muted for a second. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. So can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I apologize for that.
No problem. No problem. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So yeah, I guess it's the main problem is experience, especially if you are kind of fresh graduated. So that's a big problem, especially like if at least in my case, if I want to join the product management field. And yeah, that's really big challenge though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the biggest challenges that I think most Udacity students have, especially those who are transitioning into something they haven't done before or trying to transition into something new. And so that's something that we're going to talk about today as well. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I see also in the chat, not being able to sell yourself during the interview. I don't know that we'll touch too much on the interview just on today's session, but there are plenty of resources that we have out there for that. And if we have time towards the end, since we do have a smaller group, please kind of put that in your back pocket and bring it back up towards the end. Yes, have the skills and but not able to explain it. I gotcha. And Omar says, I don't know the real problem. I have made many interviews and all of them told me that I have very good skills, but didn't receive any offers. Okay, so that's another thing that I hope to jump into today. So thank you all for sharing that. And now my speakers are on, so I can definitely hear you. If you do have additional questions or want to continue to share. So let's jump into my first tip of the day. So my first big tip is know what employers want to see. And the reason why this is so important, it goes back to that point I mentioned earlier about how my focus as it relates to job searching is more of a marketing approach. I'm not the type of person who wants to be aggressive and cold calling and doing all the like sales type of approaches. I want people to come to me. And so think about how businesses run. I want you to start putting yourself in the position as if you are a business or if you are selling yourself as a product or service to others. People don't just want what you have. You have to be able to know what they want and then appeal to what they want. So this is really kind of step one before we kind of really move forward in talking about how to put together your resume, how to build your LinkedIn profile, who to network with, what to say during the interviews. If you don't know what they want to see, then you're really setting yourself up for failure. Because think about it like this, a kind of an easy one to talk about might be, let's talk about McDonald's. I'm sure everybody has heard of McDonald's, knows the fast food restaurant McDonald's. They don't have commercials bragging about how awesome their business is. They don't talk about how much money they made in their commercials. They don't talk about, you know, what their stock price is right now. They appeal to your needs. They show you juicy dripping burgers and crispy crunchy french fries because that's appealing to your needs as a human. That's appealing to your emotions of hunger. And so when it comes to these specific employers, you want to kind of start with an idea in mind. This is where it can be a little bit challenging when you don't know where you're going, because then you don't know which employers that you're targeting. You don't know what they want because you're just kind of casting a wide net. You're doing the spray and pray approach to applying for any jobs that you see fit. And it oftentimes doesn't produce successful results. Even if it does lead to an interview, oftentimes those roles that end up getting filled are more so from people that they know, or people who have done a little bit more in-depth research or have direct experience into that industry. So it's really important that you learn these things. And so a couple of strategies that you can implement to understand what employers want to see are informational interviews, which I know you're probably going to want to know. How do I reach out to people who work at the companies I want to work with? That's definitely an important thing to consider, but you also can explore different things like looking on LinkedIn, going to the company that you want to work for and looking at the people who are in those roles. So if you want to be a machine learning engineer at Google, let's say, for example, go on LinkedIn and look at all the machine learning engineers, see what previous experience they have. Do you match up to that? Can you fill that gap in a reasonable amount of time? Those are things that you can do to kind of understand how you might be qualified. If you're seeing what their machine learning engineers are doing and you don't have anything close to that, you're probably not Google material right now. And that is okay. That is all right. Not everybody's going to be a Google employee. It just does not work that way. So you may want to target smaller companies and find things that are a little bit more in alignment with what you're able to be competitive for. But on the topic of informational interviews, You can try connecting with some of these people on LinkedIn. Again, when you target those major, huge tech companies, their inboxes are flooded from people just like you. You're not special. You're not standing out in that messaging. And so keep those things in mind when you're doing that outreach. And one thing that people oftentimes say is that, when I ask them about their networking strategy, they say, oh, yeah, I'm reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn. That's not networking. That's begging a stranger for a job. And that doesn't often work out too well either. Sometimes you might have success with that. But more often than not, you're better off connecting with those people who are in the roles that you want, because they're going to have a better indication of what you need to bring in order to do well in those types of roles. And so trying to connect with them on a more personal level, not just sending them your resume and asking for 30 minutes to talk to them, really trying to level with someone and genuinely network, share resources, add value to them, have conversations about things that you have in common. Those are things that you can do to really spark that conversation and have that lead to an informational interview. You can also look at websites to see, maybe there are Reddit threads or things that people are talking about what they've done in their interview process or in their hiring process to get noticed. But it's really important that you understand this. And so any thoughts or questions related to this topic before we jump to the next tip? A lot of it's going to overlap, so you might hear a couple things 2 or 3 times, some new things here and there, but are there any specific questions or thoughts related to this specific tip?
Hi. I have like one note about your mentioned strategy. That's I want to ask about the challenge you raised, that how to sell yourself, or how to come up with an idea that ready to be published to the international community. Like I'm good at this point. How can like determine this point at the first place, and then how can I say like I am good at this skill, and um, how can like I know where am I in the competition with other practitioners. That's really a big concern for me right now.
Yeah, so as it relates specifically to some of those, like getting known or becoming recognized for your work, LinkedIn is a great platform to do that. LinkedIn is a great place for you to share the work that you're doing. You can add links on your profile to your GitHub. You can create content and create posts for other people to see. So one of the things that I encourage Udacity students to think about is, whenever you finish a project for your nano degree, share that on LinkedIn. Write a brief summary of what you did and then educate people a little bit. One of the things that I see a lot on LinkedIn is that people just kind of brag and they are sharing, this is what I did. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And that can work. But what I think is also a little bit more engaging, that can get more people to like and comment on your content and your posts, is to actually teach them something. So I often tell people to brag and teach. So if you're saying, look at me, I just completed this new project on with Udacity, tag Udacity on how to do this, whatever it is, and then share that. Share something that's visual. Don't just put like a text post. Maybe share a screenshot or share something that might be a little bit more visually appealing to someone as they're scrolling through. That can be really helpful to get people's attention, but then also making sure that you're on that platform connecting with other people who are in the same space as you. So if you wanted to connect with other people in your nano degree program, and then post content and try to engage with other people who are doing the same thing as well. That's how you build awareness for the work that you're doing. That's how you start to draw more traffic to your profile, which is great for recruiters who are out and actively looking for people. So I would say LinkedIn is a great place to start. I would also say be very intentional about the projects that you're building in your nano degree program. Don't just rush to get that certificate. Take your time, focus on those projects, because those are going to be things that you use to build your portfolio, and then share that. Let people into your work, let people see. That's how these recruiters know people that they want to reach out to potentially interview. So I would say LinkedIn is a great place to start. Once we get towards the end of the session, I'll be sure to drop a link on a webinar that I facilitated with Udacity on that topic. But yeah, that's a really good question. I think you want to first have a solid confidence in your skill set. That's usually what I see is lacking before people are ready to kind of start publishing their work and being confident about it. Write articles, do things like that. So that goes right in alignment with this next tip, is to really find your focus or narrow your focus. So for those of you who don't know what you want to do, I would say it's really important that you kind of try to figure that out. And one of the things that I don't want you to do is try to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your career. I don't want you to try to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your entire life. I want you to focus on kind of an ideal next step, because that releases a lot of that stress, a lot of that pressure, a lot of that, I need to figure everything out. You're never going to. I'll let you know now, there are plenty of people here at various different stages in their career who at any given moment might say, I don't know that this is exactly what I want to do. And that's okay. It's okay that you never find that. It's okay that you continue to search and continue to explore and do things that are interesting to you. But I would say if you want to have kind of a really successful job search, narrowing that focus can be really helpful. Some people think if I open my options up as wide as possible, I'm going to be considered for more opportunities. It doesn't necessarily work that way. Sometimes you have more success when you narrow it down so small that those people are a lot more excited about you. So again, going back to the comparison of you as a business, businesses don't just target any person who wants to buy their services. A lot of businesses have really specified target markets. They know exactly who they're targeting. So when they do their ads, they can say, I want a woman who is between the ages of 25 and 34, who has a college education. Like, they are going that specific. And that's what helps them to get those customers excited. So when you think about it in relation to your job search, it can be really beneficial if all of your Udacity projects are related to the same topics, or if all of your passion projects or side work are within the same industry or focus on the same kind of types of companies. If you are out here and trying to freelance and you're, doing something for this, and you're doing something related to this, and you're doing something related to this, it can help to kind of showcase you as a generalist. But if you say, I have projects related to this industry, I have 8 projects related to healthcare, that's going to help you land healthcare jobs. Now, if you have healthcare and media and sports and random things all over the place, it's not going to make you as appealing to those types of employers. It also makes it difficult for you to network. If you are connecting with machine learning engineers across the world in various different industries, that can be beneficial. But there's also a huge benefit to saying, I'm going to focus my attention on machine learning engineers that work in the healthcare space, or I'm going to focus mine on people who work in the education space, because those are going to allow you to get to know people easier. Those people can facilitate additional introductions, and you'll start to recognize like who the major players are in that industry, so that you can kind of try to get to know them and then become one of those people. You don't have to become a world's leading expert within your industry, but having that focus can be really beneficial, especially in the current job market where we've seen the pandemic really take a toll on the amount of positions available. So it's good for you to stand out as a leading expert in healthcare AI, or as a leading expert in cloud computing within tech companies, or something like that. So having that focus can be really beneficial. Any thoughts or questions related to that?
Yes, I do have a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, you can hear me. So basically, it seems what you talked about is more or less the persona or recruitment persona from the HR.
Yep.
But my question is, how can I figure that persona out? So since it's more or less kind of like internal document for the business or for the company, and I am a person who's external, want to apply. So how can I figure out that persona? So in order to say, okay, I am fit for that company or not, or more or less, I can give it a shot. You got what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say to try to find that persona necessarily within a specific company. I think that that can be helpful, but I'm talking about kind of just industry wide, finding the people who are kind of well known within that industry. But if you are thinking about like how to connect with people within specific companies, I am a big believer that you should be connecting with people at the same level as you. So if you are trying to enter a company, you're probably not going to want to reach out to the CTO at a major tech firm. You're probably going to reach out to the person who is entry level in whatever you're trying to get into. One, those people are going to be less busy responding to requests from other people. Two, you're probably going to have more in common because they're going to be most closely related to that experience that you're going through, to be able to say, you know, I was going through the same thing. These are the things that I did. But then also you want to connect with people that you connect to. You don't want to force relationships with people just to get a job. That doesn't work well. Just in my experience and the people that I've talked to, the people who are landing great jobs at great companies are not doing this one-sided parasitic type of networking. They're engaging with people who have similar interests. So they're almost friends, like in a sense, you know, you have things in common outside of just the role, outside of just the work, and you're building genuine relationships with those people and you're continuing those relationships as you grow your career. And so that would be my recommendation, is when you're looking for that specific persona, focus more so on things that you have in common versus where they fall in the organization, but also try to target those people who are within your level and within those roles versus reaching out to the HR manager, reaching out to the recruiter or some random person in sales. Focus on the people who are in kind of the same space. That would be my recommendation.
I have a question here, and I'd like you to answer it, please. My question is, what are the top factors that you should prioritize in your journey toward narrowing your focus and um, like um, make it as coherent as possible? Should it be like the money per year for this job opportunity? Should it be like number of job opportunities available for this position? Um, what are the two factors that you should be retraced?
Yeah.
I want to know what are.
So that's very personal. I think, you know, when it comes down to that, that's going to ultimately depend on your values, the things that you're looking for. If, you know, one of the things that I've been trying to talk to people about is, you know, we're not in an ideal job market. If you're not coming with a highly competitive background and a kind of plethora of different experiences that are related to your role, it's not a good idea for people to say, you know, I'm going to target the top companies that are paying the highest. Like, it's just unrealistic. And I'm usually the career coach who's saying, go for your dream job, shoot for the stars. And now we're dealing with a pandemic that has devastated the job market. The other thing to consider is that for a lot of you, you're working in building a skill set in things that are, I don't want to say they're ahead of their time, but they haven't become universal just yet. So you're developing a skill set that is going to be extremely high in demand as time goes on. And so I don't want you to think about this current job market or my success thus far in a job search is reflective of what it's going to be like forever. You're developing a skill set that you know you chose for a reason. And so that demand for that skill set is only going to continue to grow as businesses realize how important it is to have cloud computing solutions and realize how they can implement, you know, lower level machine learning into the work that they're doing to automate processes and make things easy. So I would say if you're in the initial stages, don't shoot for the top. You know, shoot for something that is going to get you closer to the top. If you say my dream job is to work at Google, don't make that a 3-month goal. Make that a 3-year goal. and then let's create smaller steps that get you there much easily. That doesn't mean you don't still try for those, but it's almost, you know, setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations, and you let that pressure and like that stress eat at you and make you feel like you're not good enough because you can't get a job there. Just don't put that pressure of trying to do it so quickly. That would be my recommendation. We're going to move on just for the sake of time. I see, Jonathan, you put something about how to build a portfolio. So that's a little bit more in depth. We could probably do an entire session on that. One thing that I will say is to, I would say, you know, it's great to have things that are a little bit more visually appealing and not just code. So maybe, you know, sometimes it helps to create like a case study, maybe make like a PowerPoint presentation or something visual to go along with things that might be a little bit more technical. I am on the position that every single person should have a portfolio. I don't care what you do. It's something that can really help you stand apart from your competition. I have a portfolio for all kinds of different things. I have portfolios related to digital marketing. I have portfolios related to teaching. I have portfolios related to all kinds of different things, because when I'm going for roles, I want to be able to showcase those different things. I will look into it. Having that portfolio session.
Just one more thing, please. If
Sure.
you are going to to create a session for about the portfolio, it would be nice if you can explain from the very beginning, like what is portfolio actually and so on. Because to be honest, I am hearing this word a lot in my career, or in my in general my experience, but I really don't know exactly what portfolio is or what it should be. And right
Yeah.
now you just made it right now more confusing for me, because you said you believe that portfolio you are one of those people should that in every single career should have a portfolio, which I believe like portfolio should be like in a specific field, but you said no, in every single field. So that's why if you are going to create that session, it would be nice if you start from the very basic about like what's portfolio
Yeah,
and so on.
absolutely. Let me clarify what I meant. So I think every individual should have a portfolio that showcases their best work, that showcases their best work related to what they want to do. The reason why I have so many different things is because my career has been a little bit all over the place. I like to explore different areas and try different things. But because when you think about a lot of the work that you do as a technical work, people want to dive in. They want to see that code. They want to see what you've created. The same thing as if you were to go and buy something from a company or hire a web developer to build a website for you. You're going to want to see what they've done previously. And so this isn't necessarily something that is required, but it is something that can help set you apart from other people. But yeah, definitely something that I have to explore a little bit further. That would take a lot more work to put together, just because it would look so different from different areas. But yeah, think about how you might be able to do that. That is also part of your job search. A job search does not just include applying for jobs online. A job search also includes building your portfolio, creating projects that are related to what you want to do. Don't wait for people to give you those jobs. Do them yourself as a way to prepare for those opportunities. So we talked about this a little bit, but the next tip is to always, always, always consider the competition. So most people, when they're going through a job search process, they'll think, okay, how can I showcase to this employer that I'm qualified to do this job? They oftentimes don't think about, how am I going to stand apart from the other people that are applying? So on average, jobs get about 200 applicants. You're one of them. At the end of that process, one person wins. One person wins, unless they're hiring for multiple roles. 199 people lose. They're losers. That is the reality of this process. You know, for each individual position, you're not, losers in the grand scheme of things, but it's really important to think how you can come at this process with a unique edge. Again, go back to the kind of the comparison to being a business. How do those businesses stand apart from other businesses? That's what gets people to choose them. And so having a portfolio could be what sets you apart from the competition. Having a connection within the company could be what sets you apart from the competition. having a specific focus on an industry where your previous experience is all in one area versus other people could be what sets you apart. If you're transitioning into a different industry, maybe try to focus, maybe try to stay within that industry with doing something different. So a recent example I have is I was talking to a student who was doing the data analyst nano degree. And previously he was a math teacher. And so he was trying to land like a data analyst role at like these top tech companies. And I was telling him he wasn't going to be very competitive. But if he were to focus on trying to get a data analyst role at an education company, or at an ed tech company, or at an education nonprofit, something related to his past, that could be what sets him apart from the other data analysts with potentially more experience, because he has ground level experience working with students. He can provide that perspective that other candidates probably wouldn't have. So as you go through this process, again, this is also a part of your job search, thinking, how do I stand apart from other people? Is it going to be through my connections? Is it going to be through my portfolio? Is it going to be through my uniquely relevant experience? Those are things that you want to consider, especially as it relates to the types of companies that you're targeting. Because if you're going for these big name companies with these high salaries, the biggest companies in the world, and you're not competitive with some of those people, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Plus, the biggest companies in the world aren't necessarily the best companies to work for. And that's one thing that a lot of people tend to forget, is that they think, oh, this company's doing so well, I want to work there. You could find probably a better job, a better experience at either a smaller company or a medium-sized company. Obviously not always the case, but don't set those black and white ideas in your head, because there's a lot of gray area when it comes to companies and the employee experience. But always consider the competition is very, very important. This is a big one. This one usually strikes a chord with most of my clients and students, because this is usually plan A and the only plan. When I talk to people about their job search strategy, a lot of people are only applying for jobs online. That is all they're doing. They're casting a wide net, looking for things that match the job title and just applying, sending the same resume over and over and over and over, and they expect people to take them seriously. I want to challenge people who think that way. If you're taking 10 minutes to apply for a job, that doesn't really make you a standout candidate for those roles. So what I would say to do is prioritize networking. Networking is going to give you the most return on your investment over time, as well as in a short-term job search, because referrals are by far the top way to get hired, and really always have been. I think the statistics show that between 40 to 60% of all people hired in general come as a result of a referral. So somebody who is recommending them from the inside, or somebody who is close saying, hey, you should check this person out. And so that's why networking should be your plan A, your top priority, your main focus. And it's also something that you should never stop doing. That's not to say that you need to be at a networking event twice a week, but it is to say that even if you're in a job that you absolutely love, you should still be networking. You should still be building your network with people in your industry, so that if things do happen, or if you are ready to make a transition, you are able to pivot much more easily. Because if you apply online, going back to the competition slide, 1 out of 199, you really think your resume is going to be the one that stands out from everybody else's. That's probably not the case. The other thing to consider is that a lot of companies use what are called applicant tracking systems. Has anybody heard of applicant tracking systems, or an ATS?
They are tracking certain keywords that they are looking for. Like I looking for a skill, a person who are skilled at Python or Django or something.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, Omar, you hit it right on the head. So to provide a little bit more of context, yes, it's kind of like a bot. It's basically a software program that companies use to scan job descriptions and then scan resumes and compare them to see how well you might fit. So it's a terrible system. Most people don't know that they exist. Most companies have not found a better way around it. But think about it like this, and then I'll get into the ins and outs of the system. When technology evolved to where companies can start putting their job applications online, that means any person in the world at any time with any background can apply for that job. What makes that difficult on the receiving end or on the hiring end is now you're having hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications. You don't have the manpower to physically review each individual resume. It's just not possible. So they've implemented these software systems that scan job descriptions when they're uploaded. And from those job descriptions, it will say what words keep popping up or what words seem important from this job description. So if you're applying for let me see. If you're applying, let's say you're applying for a machine learning role and it has a focus on like computer vision. Maybe that's the focus. If that job description has computer vision on it 5 times, it's going to be looking to see if your resume has computer vision as a keyword on there about as many times. So if you don't have computer vision on there, or you only have it on there once, you're going to receive a lower score than you would if you had it on there as many times as a job description. Now, if computer vision is on there 5 times and you put computer vision 10 times on your resume, you don't get any extra bonus points, but they're kind of measuring about how well your resume matches that job description. So it's really, really important that you review each individual job description carefully. A lot of people are just sending the same resume as fast as they can to as many different places. Sometimes that leads to interviews, but if you want to land a good job and want to have more successful job searches, you need to review each individual job description carefully. You need to focus on fewer roles, more targeted approach, and tailor each individual resume or CV that you send out to match that job description. So it sounds like a lot of work. That's because it is. That's because companies want people who are willing to put in the work, even at the beginning stages of a hiring process. You're not going to have a ton of success, like I mentioned, just sending the same exact resume to every single position, because one machine learning engineer position might not have computer vision on it at all, whereas one might have it 5 or 6 times. And so when you send that resume in, that's going to determine how successful you are. A lot of companies will kind of designate a threshold to say that this resume needs to match the job description at 40%. And anything that falls below 40% due to the algorithm of the applicant tracking system doesn't even get seen by a person. It's like balling up your resume and throwing it in the trash can if the company's using one of those systems.
I'd like to share an idea about this particular point. Like,
Sure.
uh, a good way to manage your resumes or your CVs is to have a version control of your CV, that you can manage it to add multiple skills for your target jobs. That this will really reduce the headache of editing your CV multiple times and saving it, and get like confused about which CV you have saved. I just found this idea is a good idea to tackle this overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And so I think it's important that you do have different versions of your resume if you are going to target different types of roles, but then also making it easy to make those changes, I think, is important. So some people will have a section where they talk about their skills. They may call it something different, like expertly trained in, or core competencies, or major strengths, whatever. And then they list the keywords directly from the job description. And sometimes that makes it easier for them to swap things in and out. But going back to the slide, applying online should not be your plan A. And so even if you create the most perfectly tailored resume to the job description, that does not guarantee interviews. And when you think about it, 1 out of 200 people is 0.5% of a chance of getting a job. I don't like those odds. If it's me, I'm prioritizing networking. I'm focused on the types of companies that I want to work for, and I'm aggressive about trying to connect with the people that work with those companies, because those referrals lead to more job openings, lead to more job offers. It makes sense for me to put most of my time in the bucket where people get most job offers, not to spend my time doing what everybody else is doing. That goes again back to the competition. If you do what everyone else does, you're never going to stand out, especially if your resume isn't perfect. So think about other ways that you can kind of approach your job search strategy, and make sure that networking is at the forefront. So leading to our next point, it's time to get used to it. And now that we're not able to meet in person as much, get used to virtual networking. So LinkedIn is a great place to do this. Meetup is a great place to do this. And also just doing a Google search of virtual communities in computer vision, virtual communities in cloud computing, virtual communities in digital marketing. These are places that you want to be in, getting to know people, learning where they work, finding time to get to speak with them. And then also, as I mentioned before, don't be that person who approaches this from one-sided. Don't be that parasitic person who's like, give me, give me, give me. Also be that person who is saying, here's a resource that I found. I think you would really benefit from it. I just took this Udacity nano degree course. It was amazing. You should check it out. Here are my notes. You know, I don't know. But some of the best networking that I've done have even been off the topic of professional. Some of my best kind of business friends I've met at events that are unrelated to, you know, networking or IT or career stuff. It's people I met at a music event, or someone I met at a restaurant that we both went to multiple times. So you don't have to be that person who says, oh, I have all this to offer. It could just be showcasing to the other person that you are genuinely interested in getting to know them, genuinely interested in building a relationship with them, and genuinely interested in having a mutually beneficial relationship. One that goes both ways, one that is not just give me a referral, give me a referral. It's, you know, asking about them, trying to get to know them, trying to build with them, work on a project together, collaborate on an article, put together an event for your peers. These are things that you can do to really build solid foundations and relationships with people. But you want to explore what are those virtual channels that you can still do this, because a lot of those virtual communities within the space that you're looking for are hosting events. They have private job boards. They're willing to give referrals without ever meeting in person or meeting virtually. It's just that you're in that same group, and they want to help other people in that group. So this should be plan A right now. Landing a good job at a good company in 2021. My biggest recommendation: prioritize virtual networking. I would say this is going to lead to the most success, and it's hard. It is difficult to do this. It is difficult to start doing this. It's one of those things that snowballs in a good way. So it starts small, and as you build your network, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and easier and easier and easier to land jobs. That's why you see the people who have risen to the top of their careers, oftentimes, guess who their friends are? Other people at the top of other companies. They aren't always making friends then. They were friends here, and they grew up together. And so if you want to build long-term career success, not just trying to land a quick job really quickly, if you want to land something over time and build a career, you need to prioritize networking. And networking has the most potential return of investment of your time in the long run. If you spend 10 hours applying for jobs online and don't get any interviews, you wasted 10 hours of your time. If you spend 10 hours networking, those relationships could help you get a job now. They could help you get a job maybe in 2 years. Maybe they don't provide anything right now, but they help you down the road because you've taken time to build into that relationship and prioritize networking. I can't stress how important and how valuable it is. But yeah, any major questions related to this? I wanna keep moving just for the sake of time, but yes, let's talk about more networking. I agree. Any thoughts or major questions related to virtual networking? Nope. All right, cool. Moving on. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Brett. Hello, everybody. I would like to ask about virtual. How can we use another networking besides the common LinkedIn? Another
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, so LinkedIn, I would say, is a great place to start. One, because you can be very intentional and very targeted. So if you say, if you put together a list of companies, which I highly recommend, that helps you to narrow your focus. Put together a list of 10 to 15 companies, and then you can make it a habit of saying, okay, I want to land a cloud computing job at one of these 15 companies. Then what you can do is go on LinkedIn and search for cloud computing professionals within those companies, and then be very targeted with your outreach. LinkedIn is the best for that if you want to be specific. But I do think it's helpful to have a balance of very targeted networking and then also more organic, genuine networking where you're exploring other channels. So Meetup, as I mentioned before, is great. I know it's primarily used in the US, but I'm pretty sure there are other meetup groups abroad. But that one's great because you could potentially find people there. There are meetup groups related to everything. There are meetup groups related to fitness, video games, but there are also professional meetup groups that you can check out and see if there are any locally. But one of the cool things about Meetup now, as a result of COVID, is that you're able to network outside of your current location. So if you really wanted to work in Barcelona and you lived in Germany, that would be very difficult to network pre-COVID. But now a lot of those groups have shifted to virtual. They have events, they're having speed networking, they're doing things to where you look at that silver lining and see, how can I take advantage of this situation? If you wanted to move there, you could start building a network of people in another place where you wouldn't have been able to do before COVID, because they would have been having all of their networking events in person. And so now that everything is moved to virtual, you can explore those different channels. And then the only thing that I'm having a little bit of difficulty with is providing recommendations on a global scale. It's really, really difficult for me to keep track of every single networking channel across the globe, in addition of, trying to stay in touch with different specific technical expertises. So obviously most of my knowledge and resources are US based, but I would just say do a couple of Google searches, do some independent research, look at networking channels within your specific area. The more specific you can get, the better. Because if you're going to people in tech meetup group, that can be helpful, but you're going to talk to people in HR, people in sales, people in marketing, people in engineering. You want to focus on the people who are right there within your space. So instead of going with the people in tech, go with the machine learning engineers in healthcare meetup if you can find it, because those are going to be people that are more aligned with what you want, which makes for better networking. But yeah, great question. It's just hard for me to provide some recommendations based on that, because I can't keep track of everything globally and they're popping up everywhere. But that's a great question. So the next one, I've touched on this plenty of times. As you can imagine, this is another top priority for me, especially as it relates to job searching, is LinkedIn. If you do not have a profile, create one before you go to bed tonight. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to start somewhere. There's also a webinar that I facilitated on here. So if you find your way, and if somebody could do this in the chat, that would be really, really helpful. So on Udacity's YouTube page, there is a playlist for career webinars. This will go on there once it's finished and recorded, but there's a webinar that I facilitated on there. Two of them actually. One is about optimizing your profile, and the second one is about engagement and content creation. Both of those will give you a very solid head start on how to leverage LinkedIn, not only for your job search, but if you want to do freelancing, if you want to start a business. But LinkedIn is probably by far the most useful tool that I have ever used related to my career. It has allowed me to fast track past some of my peers. It's allowed me to get business without doing any sales, drawing people passively to me. It's allowed me to get requests to interview for companies I probably get 2 or 3 messages a month from people asking me to be a career coach for them. And that's without ever applying. That's without being aggressive about trying to reach out to these people. But this has also been, you know, a couple of years in the making of me trying to build a brand for myself. But I didn't have a me when I was going through this process. I'll continue to go through this, but if somebody could find that link and drop it in the chat, that would be awesome. If not, I'll post it in the end. If you guys can remind me, it's gonna be difficult for me to take off this screen. But yeah, if you can find that, even if it's just the link to the webinars playlist, that would be really helpful. This is a big one, as all of them are. These are the top tips. So my next tip is, oh yes, awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Stop waiting for people to give you a chance. This is one of my biggest pet peeves as a career coach, is hearing people say, nobody's giving me a chance. Nobody's willing to hire me. That is not the mentality that is helpful. And sometimes it's real. And I've been there. I've been in that position, even as a career coach, knowing everything that I needed to do and still feeling like nobody's giving me a chance. You have to push through that. You have to go around that. You have to stop waiting for other people. If you want to work in the healthcare space, don't wait to get a healthcare job to start working on healthcare projects. Find open source projects, create your own projects, write articles, build a name for yourself as an expert in that area. Do what you can do, control what you can, because this mentality, waiting for somebody to give you a chance, is going to keep you exactly where you are. So find ways to create those opportunities for yourself. Volunteer, reach out to that person who's starting their own machine learning consulting agency, or they're doing freelance data analytics work. Ask them if you can volunteer to help them for a couple of hours a week. Do what you can. It is hard out here. It is very tough to break into an industry. It's very tough to change careers. And if you sit there and say, poor me, I wish somebody would give me a chance, I have all the skills but don't have the experience, you're not going to make it very far. You need to be aggressive about creating those opportunities for yourself, because that's what you can control. You can control what you do, and that will create such a freedom that you will start to learn how to do that even better and even better and even better. So even if you're in a job that you love, but you know what your next step is, start looking at those job descriptions now. Use those job descriptions as your roadmap. Find the gaps in where you are now to where you want to be, and start looking for ways to create those experiences proactively, so that you're not just sitting in your comfort zone for 3 years and then saying, okay, I want to be here. Work your way up to that. Be intentional about where you want to go, and find ways. You can sometimes do that within your current role. Sometimes you have to go outside of that. Sometimes you might have to freelance. Sometimes that you might have to do volunteer work. Sometimes you might have to take an internship with a small business owner. Do what you can and do what you need to do, because this mentality here of waiting for people to give you a chance is only going to hold you back. And the more comfortable you get with creating that for yourself, the better. Because I've had to deal with this so many different times. And I'll share this story with you all because I think it's relevant. Very similar to some of you all who are taking these nano degree courses. In 2016, I took a resume writing course. So I didn't start off as a career coach. I didn't get to finish a resume writing course and start applying for career coaching jobs. People wouldn't hire me because I didn't have enough skills and I didn't have enough experience. So I worked with family and friends and helped them with their resumes. I spoke at churches for free to get new clients. I did webinars. I was doing free things all the time until I was able to charge. And then I charged way less than I should have been charging because I wanted more clients. And I just worked my way up until the point now. That's 4 years. 4 years is a long time, but it's also a very small amount of time in the grand scheme of your career. So if you can do this over time and stay consistent, it will work out extremely well in your favor. And even more probably for you all, because you have a technical skill set that's in demand. Everybody on LinkedIn thinks they're a career coach, but you all have an extremely in-demand skill set that you can leverage throughout the rest of your career. So Don't pity yourself. That imposter syndrome, get rid of it. As much as I have to deal with it myself, I have to continue to deal with that. I have to continue to fight that. It's not something that you ever get over. It's something that is a daily reminder to say, I am qualified, I am good enough, and if I'm not, let me get there and let me take it into my own hands to facilitate that. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to give me that opportunity. Take agency of what you can, because that's going to get you closer to your goal than waiting for it. And that touches on this point. Volunteer work is still experience. If you have to do work for free, join the club. We know that you have a very high in-demand skill set. We know that your skill set demands a pretty hefty sum of money related to it. But if people aren't begging, knocking down your door to hire you, you're not too good to work for free. I'm not an advocate for free work. Let me make that clear. I do not want people out here taking unpaid internships and working for free unless you feel like it's going to get you closer to your goal. I think that it's extremely valuable. I've done a total of 4 internships in my career. One of them was paid. The other 3 were all unpaid, but all 3 of those have really contributed to me getting to where I am. And so do not think you're too good, especially if people aren't begging you to come work for them. Do not go above and think that you're beyond working for free, because it can be the only way sometimes for you to gain experience where employers are not willing to hire you. It can be a little bit difficult in certain industries, but that's still no excuse to not try, to not reach out to people, find the people who are doing it, find the small startups, and reach out and say, hey, I just really need to find some experience. I need to apply what I know in my head and get something to put on my resume. I'm willing to work a couple hours for free, even if it's entry level data scraping. Do what you have to do. That is, I can't stress it enough. Do what you have to do. Kevin says, right now I'm thinking I'm good enough, smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. Yes, sometimes it helps to just write that down. I think I posted on LinkedIn the other day that, don't internalize rejection, because that is going to it is really going to eat at you. It's going to just suck and drain your motivation. So if you apply for a job and don't get it, or if you apply for a job and get an interview and don't get it, do not internalize that. What I mean by that is, do not say, I didn't get it, that means I must not be good enough. I didn't get it, that means I'm not qualified enough. Sometimes they hired their friend. Sometimes you were overqualified. Sometimes you were qualified, but you just didn't fit that culture, which is saving them and you time in the long run. Sometimes things just happen. And so when you're going through this process, it is important for you to reflect. It is important for you to be somewhat critical, to say, how could I have done better? Not what did I do wrong? Those are 2 different questions. What did I do wrong and how can I do better are 2 different questions. I don't want you to ask, what did I do wrong? I want you to ask, how can I do better? Does that mean continuing to build your portfolio, adding more relevant projects, doing more prep work in advance of your interviews, applying for a more specified target of companies? Those are things that I want you to do. Those are things that you can control. You can't control whether or not someone likes you. You can't control whether or not someone else had a referral. What you can control is how to make yourself better moving forward. So
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned, have a reflection if you got rejected and to know what happened exactly and so on. Yeah. So the main issue is that's what I think. Perhaps I might be wrong, but that's what I think, that companies don't give you feedback why you have been rejected. So how can I figure out that rejection? So in order to do the reflection, it's like a loop. You know what I mean? It's like a loop, like I can't get out. So, okay, I want to do the reflection, but how can I do reflection without feedback? Yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. And I have another question, but after you answer me this.
Sure. Yeah. Hold on to that one. So I say always ask for feedback, even though most of the times you won't get it. Sometimes you will. Always ask just in case. But one of the things that people don't oftentimes know is that a lot of companies have actual policies in place where they tell their recruiters, do not provide feedback. There are HR managers who are telling their people do not provide feedback if they ask. And part of that is just kind of risk management and them trying to avoid potential discrimination lawsuits, because people can take that feedback and they can misconstrue it and hire a lawyer and say, you didn't hire me because you're discriminating against me. And so a lot of companies have those policies in place just to protect themselves from those potential discrimination suits. The other thing to think about is that if you're a recruiter, you're not just hiring for one job a year. You have a list of jobs that you're hiring for. So if you have 200 candidates, if you're interviewing 10 people for each job, I don't have time to sit here and say, hey, you know what would have been great on your resume? Or, hey, you know what would have been really awesome if you mentioned during your interview? They don't have the time, they don't have the capacity to do that at all times. And so you can't expect them to give you feedback. What I say to do is go back through that job description, ask yourself, do I have every single one of these things 100%? If not, can I take an online course? Can I volunteer? Can I work on a project that's related to that so that I can be better moving forward? You don't always have the feedback to know that, but then if you lose out on that opportunity with that company, that's a completely different experience of you applying for a different opportunity. So you can't always use that feedback either, because sometimes it's just not a good fit. Sometimes there was someone better than you and you can't control that. So think about, like, what are some areas that you might be able to improve on, and then just try to go about it that way. That would be my best recommendation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of companies, they avoid that feedback just out of fear of getting sued. Yeah, and Kevin says they aren't always honest. Yes, one go-to is we decided to move forward with somebody who better fit what we were looking for. Very generic, very bland, whatever answer to get you to move on and leave them alone. Probably because they don't have a whole lot of time to help you.
It's more or less like the global response.
Yes, it is the global response. And trust me when I tell you, I've probably received it as many times as you have. So I know what it feels like. And Kevin dropped in the chat, networking can be good for feedback. Absolutely. Gotten good feedback from recruiters, but then again, you're probably going to get feedback from those people who you've taken time to build a relationship with, not that random person who you reached out to on LinkedIn and sent the resume and asked for a referral. Probably going to be those people that you met through other channels, or showcase, you know, I'm a genuine person, I'm likable, help me. Those tend to work out a little bit better. Yeah. What was your other question?
Okay, so the other question regarding the volunteering one. So I'm currently working like as a volunteer, and one of the main issues is like how to translate the volunteering work into the reality in order to make the external, which is in this case the recruiter, understand what I was doing and how connected to the job description that I am applying for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, great question. So I think one, be somewhat critical about what you're volunteering for. If you're just volunteering and it's not related to what you want to do, find something that is more closely related. That's not to say that work experience in general isn't valuable, but if you're working for someone and they're not paying you, you can be a little bit more critical and saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to work on tasks that are a little bit more related to that. Obviously, you're not going to approach it with that same tone, but you know, find a way to have that conversation to say, hey, I've been doing a lot of this work. I'm really trying to get here. Is there a way that I can be involved in something that's a little bit more closely related to that? I think that that's a conversation that you want to have. If it's not possible, find another opportunity that is more closely related. I'm one of those people. It's like, I do not stay with something if it no longer serves me. That goes for employers, that goes for clients, that goes for professional organizations. You know, it's not good to develop those one-sided relationships in general, even if it's with an employer. Another thing is that your application materials, your resume, your CV, your LinkedIn profile should be more future focused than past focused. And that's something that I forgot to mention earlier. People are like, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, but none of it relates to what you want to do. So you should be building your resume, building your LinkedIn profile, branding yourself with this in mind, not with all of this in the past in mind, because again, thinking about your resume like a tailored proposal. saying, this is a document that I'm putting together that showcases my ability to get this job. This is not a document where I've just regurgitated my 5 past job descriptions into bullet points. This is me taking what I've done and saying what things about that are most relevant to what I want to do. Then I'm going to build my bullet points around that. If it's unrelated, leave it off or find something better to replace it with. That's how you want to approach it, and thinking about how can I transition my strategy to be more focused here than more focused on everything that I've done in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, and then just lastly, I would say this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see people make all the time, not just job search related. Always document your experience, especially if you're volunteering. If you are not keeping track of the impact that you're making a big mistake. If you're not keeping track of the projects that you're working on, if you're not finding ways to, quantitatively and qualitatively gather feedback and data from your work to be able to showcase that to future employers, you're missing a huge opportunity. And this isn't to pick on anybody, but I say this to people who are in their dream jobs now. Like, what impact are you having? Because when you go to apply for a job, every single job opening ever is a problem that needs to be solved. So if you just say, this is what I do, 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 you're missing a huge opportunity to say, this is how I've improved the company that I'm with. This is how I improved that business that I worked with 2 years ago. This is how I solved that problem that was really, really major. That's going to be appealing to the employers because they're going to say, if you did that there, you can probably do that here. That makes me excited to want to talk to you. That sets you apart from the competition, because if I have a machine learning engineer role that I'm interviewing for and I have 8 data analysts who are applying for that, I'm going to want to hire and speak to the data analyst who said that I've increased efficiency of the team, I've reduced costs, I've done whatever. Focus on that impact and document that experience is hugely valuable. Something that everybody should be doing.
I agree with you 100% about like the impact. Like it's absolutely valuable more than anything.
Yeah.
Just one more question, if you don't mind. So you have mentioned about like connecting in LinkedIn and network, and you should like instead of like connecting with HR people or the recruiters, you should connect with the people who are in the same role as you, right?
Yeah.
So right now, what you are saying is kind of the opposite of what I am hearing, of what I'm hearing from people who kind of have some experience in LinkedIn or even on YouTube. That like they always like encouraging like go and try and find the recruiter and send them a message or send her a message and tell them, hey, I applied, I'm interested in this position and blah 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 and all these things. So it's kind of confusing here right now because the majority of them, they are saying what I just said, and what you're saying is kind of the opposite. So like, can you give me your perspective about this part?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's important to recognize that you don't have to agree with everything I say. There's not going to be any career coach in the world who's going to say something that everybody agrees with universally. I think there's 2 different mindsets and 2 different philosophies from the people that you're hearing from. So what they're saying to me is, here's how to get a job most quickly. I'm not trying to teach that. I'm trying to teach people to how to build the most successful career. I'm not in the space of like how to land a job as fast as possible. I don't coach like that. I don't want people to do that, because what happens is those people end up getting a job very quickly and they end up hating it, or they end up getting it and they're like, this isn't what I expected. This isn't what I was hoping to do. Or they end up like most of my students who do those things and they fall into the ocean of everybody else who's doing what's easy. They're focusing on the recruiters. Hey, quick message. They're trying to get it and they get it. There's nothing beneficial about that moving forward. What I teach is long-term career success. I'm trying to help people design their lifestyle. I'm trying to help people get here. I don't really care about, getting a job. I want people to get the right job, to get a good job, to get a job that is in alignment with where they want to be in life. So that may be where the differences are. But also just keep in mind, like, these are just things to add to your tool belt. If you're doing that, that's fine. I'm not saying don't do that stuff at all. What I'm saying from my experience, what I've seen work well for me, my students, and my clients is going this other route that other people aren't going. And that's not to say that you can't do a little bit of both. But you have to figure out what works for you. Applying online for some people has worked really well. I've seen it, but they tend to fall in the smaller minority of people. The people who I see have success are the people who are networking first, the people who are leveraging LinkedIn actively, the people who are building those mutually beneficial relationships and getting those referrals. Those are the people that I see land jobs at the top companies, and build that long-term career success that I'm talking about. So yeah. And then another tip to keep in mind, keep an open mind to lower level roles. Again, we're living in the midst of a global pandemic, unlike anything we've really seen before, and that has had devastating impacts on the job market. It is okay for you to take a role that is not where you ideally want to be, but is something that could get you closer to that point. So, if you, let's say, for example, you are trying to get a machine learning engineer role and you don't have a ton of experience. Maybe you just graduated with your master's degree a year ago and you don't have any work experience. There's nothing wrong with taking an entry-level data analyst role. It may be above you in terms of your skill set. However, that allows you to go in and crush it. That allows you to go in and absolutely do so well in that role that you can either be considered for a higher level role, or you have more relevant experience than nothing. And so humble yourselves a little bit if you're in that position. Not everybody's there, but if you are in a position where you're saying, I could take a lower level role, it might not be the most engaging thing in the world, but if you're not competitive for these roles, then you need to take a step back. And that's okay, because even if you're in an entry-level data analyst role, even if you're in an entry-level cloud role, entry-level software developer role, those are still amazing jobs to have right now. Let me tell you, a lot of these jobs are starting off making well more than what you need to cover your means. And so keep an open mind to those lower level roles. Even if you know that you're a little bit more qualified, it's okay. It is okay for you to take a step back in order to help you take a step forward. I see Kevin asked the question, do you think it's a good idea to get involved with a startup just to build a minimum viable product to get portfolio experience? Absolutely. I think startups have so much potential that people oftentimes throw them out because they have an idea in their head about what a startup is. They hear the word startup and they think one thing. There are startups with 200 employees. There are startups with 3 employees. There are startups that will allow you flexibility there that a full-time job won't have. So let me give you kind of this example. If you're working for a startup that has no data team, maybe they're hiring you to be a data analyst. They're not going to be, oftentimes not going to be against you exploring your machine learning algorithms that you're learning in your nano degree project. They're oftentimes not going to say, hey, we don't want you to try that new data science technique that you learned on LinkedIn today. They're going to be more flexible because you are the expert. You're the technical expert, as long as you're getting the work done and you can continue to explore and try different things. If you work for Amazon or Google or Netflix, you're probably going to be like this at your job. You're going to be working on one product. You're going to be doing one thing probably very frequently until you have absolutely mastered that and kind of are in that specialized space. Obviously, that's not everybody's experience, but those startups can be extremely valuable in offering you the flexibility to try things, to use new things that you're learning. And that can be an extremely valuable experience. Plus, they're oftentimes not as competitive as those major companies. So, they oftentimes don't have talent acquisition teams. So they don't have recruiters on staff. It's, 2 developers and a salesperson, right? They don't have a recruiter. So it helps if you reach out and say, hey, are you guys doing anything on the data side of things? Or are you doing anything on with cloud? I'd love to jump in and see how I can be helpful or how I can be useful. Have a conversation with them, see if they're willing to hire you part-time, see if they'll pay you $20 an hour or, whatever is fair as you're kind of entering there. That could potentially lead to a full-time role if the business continues to grow. But in that meantime, build your portfolio, get real world experience, apply the things that you're learning, because experience at a startup, experience volunteering, experience working with a small business owner is 10 times better than zero experience. So again, it's okay to humble yourself. It's okay to take a step back, especially these days when we're dealing with a pandemic that has devastated the job market. You all know why you chose these programs. You all are developing skill sets that are going to be so normal in 5 to 10 years. And if you start this process now, even if it's hard, I promise you it's not going to be, harder than when every company has a data analyst on their team, which means that they've invested in data, which means that they're considering algorithms for machine learning. They may be thinking about how they can implement computer vision into their new startup idea. And so, it's okay to grind now to really, really receive those benefits down the line. You guys are in a good place. I don't want you to feel like you're failing because people aren't knocking down your door to hire you. I know that's what they make it seem like in the tech industry, but that's not always the case. And it's okay to start a little bit lower than you may have initially hoped. My advice would be completely different if we were talking last year. Very similar, but there's a lot of things that are very different now than have ever been. So lastly, keep your head up. As I mentioned before, you all know what you're doing. You're here, which says a ton, that you are here as a Udacity student, but also here attending this webinar. If you keep this up, if you stay consistent, it's very difficult to fail. I don't know if I know any hardworking people who aren't successful, like at least eventually. The people who focus on in demand, which all of you are doing, everything that you are learning is in demand now and will only continue to grow. Udacity doesn't build content that isn't in alignment with that ideology. So keep grinding now. You may not see the benefits right away, but you will start to see it as time goes on. Sometimes it's just helpful to kind of keep your head down, keep grinding, and really be grateful. Practice gratitude. I know one of the things that I've had to really practice is thinking about, I'm where I dreamed of being 4 years ago. I still feel like, I want to be there. I want to be in this place. I should be there, but I'm not. And it makes you kind of doubt yourself, but then think about, like, 5 years ago, I never would have imagined I would be this smart. I never would have imagined I would be able to do the things that I'm able to do with what I'm learning, with the experience that I'm gaining, with the things that I'm doing. So sometimes it helps to just kind of take time and be grateful for yourself. Be grateful for the work that you've put in thus far. Focus on the things that you can control. A lot of the things I've talked about are outside of job search strategies. A lot of this is emotional. And a lot of times, especially us as men, I don't know if there probably only a couple of women in here, which is great. But even just in general, especially people in tech, we oftentimes throw away the emotions. The emotions are not important, but it's extremely important when you go through this process. When you go through a job search, you're taking blows to your ego every single day that you don't get hired. And that takes a toll on you in your overall life. It's not just your career. It depends on how you're able to provide for your family. It values your self-worth sometimes. And so it's important that you recognize the emotional aspect of this. If this is stressful, if you're having a tough time, reach out for mental health counseling. I've done it plenty of times. It's one of the biggest things that I can recommend for people who are going through a job search. Talk to somebody who is a professional in that. The way you're a professional in what you do and I'm a professional in what I do, I talk to someone who's a professional in helping me to recognize that I'm doing the best that I can and that I need to do things like practice gratitude and focus on controlling what I can, because those things are only going to help, and those other things are going to make this process so much more difficult. So I know we went over time by quite a bit, but I really appreciate you all joining. I love the small group interaction. This was a great session, I hope, and I hope you all are a little bit more prepared kind of moving forward for 2021. And I would just say lastly, check out some of those previous webinars that I mentioned. There's a playlist of, I think it's over 70 now, maybe 60 to 70 different webinars like this from all of the different career coaches that work here at Udacity. So find the ones that are related to the topics that you want to explore, and just kind of take a look at those. How can we get in touch if we have questions? So one of the things that I would say is that we don't have a lot of capacity to do one-on-one, very similar to like the recruiters. So it's very difficult for us to kind of respond to emails and things like that, especially with more in-depth questions. So what I would highly recommend for all of you, if this was helpful, if you want to learn more, if you have the ability, please schedule those one-on-one coaching sessions. If you paid for the nano degree program, some scholarships do, some don't, but each nano degree program that you pay for, sign up for, you get 4 career coaching sessions. So in your career portal, where you have like the access to submit your resume and your LinkedIn profile, there should be a link there for you to schedule a one-on-one call. You're more than welcome to schedule with me or any of the other coaches on staff. This is probably one of the most talented teams I've ever worked on. So you're in good hands with whoever you move forward with. But those one-on-one calls are really good for you to say, I attended this webinar with Brett. One of the things that he really talked about was virtual networking. And I think that that's something I'd like to spend this 30 minutes focusing on. Or if you say, you know, one of the things that Brett talked about was really narrowing your focus. Can we have a conversation about figuring out what it is that I really want to do, and then creating a plan to move forward from that? I don't want anybody to go through this process just wandering aimlessly. You need a plan, you need to focus, and then from there it helps you to be more strategic about how you can move forward. But yeah, Lily, if you want to, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a ton of different resources there, articles, how-to guides. I post content here and there, not so much lately because I've been really busy, but you can stay in touch there. If you do have quick questions, I'm always available for those on LinkedIn, but don't reach out and say, hey, I need you to look at my resume. Those are much more in-depth things. But if you have like a quick question, I'm more than happy to help or redirect you to scheduling a one-on-one call. But yes, thank you all again so much, especially those of you who might be in less ideal time zones. But thank you all for attending. And yeah, we will wrap up. Thank you. Also, there's the Student Hub that you can check out for those channels. We do career office hours there as well. Mine are usually on Wednesdays from 6 to 7. And then all the other coaches have hours as well. So stay tuned within those, and also keep an eye out on the Udacity events channel. I always recommend that people bookmark that and just check that here and there. You can always RSVP in advance and get those reminders. But yeah, thanks again for attending. I hope you all learned a lot, or at least learned something, and I appreciate you joining in today. I hope you all have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.